Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to a special edition of the Saratoga podcast. It's our special school board election edition. Welcome, Adam, and welcome, Dan.
Do we have to do school board election edition?
I'm a big gesticulator, so I'm going to say school board election edition.
Okay.
Because school board elections are tomorrow. They're tomorrow,
Yes.
Tuesday, tomorrow.
Vote, people. Whoever you're voting for, vote.
Yes, that is going to be the resounding message of this podcast. But school board elections don't get a lot of attention until right before the election, in our experience. And that's why we're doing this podcast today, because school boards and school board elections and who's on your school board really matters. And so this was an opportunity for us to get the message out about who's running and what they stand for. And we're really excited to do that. Real quickly, before we do so, however, I want to do two quick disclosures. One is that Adam Israel has worked with one of the candidates, Sharon Dominguez, on her campaign. And so we wanted to make that disclosure. Adam will not be joining us for Sharon's interview for just fairness and partiality. Dan DiFederici also runs the Saratoga Report. Two of the candidates, Sharon and Joe, have advertised with Dan DiFederici for their school board candidacies. And so we wanted to let viewers know, just for transparency and to be up and up about everything.
Yes. And all candidates were offered a chance to advertise on Saratoga Report.
Correct.
Two took. Three of them initially didn't get back to me, and eventually did get back to me.
What Dan's saying is that he'll take money from anyone, folks.
Yes. Your check clear.
Yes. But what's most important is that we've had people from all political persuasions on this podcast, and we've always allowed people to express their opinions. And if we've disagreed at any stage of the game, we've always done so respectfully. And we've never had a guest walk away feeling like their comments or their opinions or what they wanted to say was stymied in any way by our own personal biases. We try to stay very self-aware of those things. So that being said, as I said earlier, the school board election is tomorrow, Tuesday, May 16th. And we wanted to just jump right in. I'm going to say goodbye to Adam.
All right, guys. We'll see you. We'll see you on the flippity flop.
All right, we'll see you on the flippity flop, Adam.
Wait. Can Adam? Like, my intention with Sharon was to simply sit here and be quiet, and Joe and Robin just watch, just observe from here. I guess I wasn't going to ask anything, but can we stay in studio?
I think it's completely appropriate for you to weigh in, Dan. But I will leave that up to you to decide. Adam really has worked closely with Sharon's campaign, so I do think it's a good idea for Adam to sit out Sharon's interview. That being said, we do have a list of questions we're planning on asking all the candidates today, so there is a lot of standardization here.
Okay. I'll just defer to you. I'd like to stay in studio. If there's a specific reason for me to ask something, I will, but I'm going to defer to you, Robin, in these questions.
I love this. Everyone deferring to Robin. Can we do this all the time? All right. Bye, Adam. Love you. All right. That being said, I would like to introduce Sharon Dominguez, who is our first school board candidate. Welcome, Sharon. Welcome to the Saratoga podcast.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Of course. I'm excited. I tuned in last week, and you guys have such a great show. I'm sorry that I haven't seen it before, but I will be tuning in from now on.
Oh, well, thank you. We always appreciate a guest who starts off with a compliment. So, Sharon, we just want to dive right in, if that's okay with you.
Let's do it.
So the first question we have for all of the candidates today were, what were some of the motivating factors that led you to the decision to run for school board?
Sure. Well, first of all, I come from a family of educators, so education has always been very important to us. I actually started out early childhood education when I started college. And the other thing is I've just always been an active member in my community. So I've always volunteered for different programs and organizations. And about a year and a half ago, I started going to the school board meetings and really just wanted to make a bigger impact rather than standing up at public comment or sitting on the sidelines listening.
Well, I have to, as someone who is on the city council, I have to applaud the spirit in which you're running, because it really is easy to stand on the sidelines and kind of like throw bombs from the sidelines. But once you kind of get in the game, it's a whole different story. So I appreciate that you're stepping up to do it. The same way I appreciate our current school board and all of their volunteerism, because folks, if you don't know, this is a volunteer position. There's no payment. and there's no glory. It's all work. So to all the candidates running and to the current school board, we appreciate all of you. Secondly, are there 3 issues in particular or a handful of issues in particular that you're really passionate about or that you're really intent on addressing if you're elected?
Sure. So it's really interesting when I get that question because all of the topics are actually intertwined. What seems to be the hot topic, and I think it's important to listen to the people that you're representing. And as I go out into the public and I'm talking to different parents and teachers, or they're reaching out to me, their number one issue is school safety. And if any of you have been following along, that has, for the last year, has really been the highlight of what's been going on with the school board. And so last year we had Uvalde, and then in the fall we actually had a insurance audit that was done on the school, the entire district, all 8 campuses. Along there was a list of things that they had recommended. Along with that list was 2 additional SROs to cover our 6 elementary school campuses. And so it was just very interesting to me that our insurance auditor had signaled or identified that this is a deficit that we need to fill. And in, I believe it was February, we had 4 board members vote against that recommendation. That was very concerning to me, as well as the parents and teachers that are reaching out to me or that I've been in contact with. So was it the only determining factor? No, it wasn't, but it was definitely, it was eye-opening for sure. And then the other thing is that, this whole thing with the SROs, it is school resource officer. For those who don't know what they are, within our city limits, we have Saratoga Springs City police officers. They volunteer for this particular position, and then they have to be certified in order to be able to work in the school. So it's not just any person that is allowed to do this. It is actually a trained city police officer or county for our 2 schools that are outside the district, or 3 actually, which is the middle school, Dorothy Nolan, and then also Greenfield. So these people want to work with our kids. They enjoy working with our kids, and they have to be trained to work in a school setting. I don't know if that was the, sorry, I kind of got off on that one thing. Sorry.
Real quick, can I ask you just one comment? Because I actually have followed the school safety debate very closely. Mm-hmm. I will say that we do this insurance audit, I believe, every year. Our insurance company.
It's every couple of years. It's every couple of years. Yeah.
I just know that I was perplexed, I guess would be the right word, because in the past, the school board has voted to go with whatever the insurance auditor's recommendations have been. And so this seems to have been the first time there's been a vote where there's been some contention as to whether or not they're going to follow those recommendations.
Correct. Well, actually, it was the second time because the town of Wilton actually offered a free SRO for 5 years. They were going to pay for the SRO for Dorothy Nolan. And for whatever reason, these individuals also voted against that that gift, if you will. So I can't speculate why, but I can just tell you that a lot of parents want their kids, they want to send their kids to a safe environment, and they feel like SROs are part of that equation. It's not the whole equation, but it definitely is part of it.
If I could jump in, Robin, and I said I wasn't going to, but because I'm a retired state trooper and I have young children, this issue is sort of near and dear to my heart. I just want to ask Sharon or you, Robin, to clarify for the viewers that yes, God forbid, there's an SRO is an armed police officer, and God forbid if there's the horrific things happen, he or she is especially trained to do the best they can to repel such a horrific attack. However, 99.9% of what an SRO does is before that and beyond that. It's a day-to-day positive environment for the students. And if one of you could just explain to the viewers on what an SRO does beyond just protecting the students.
So you know what? I actually, Sharon, I don't want to cut you off. I actually do want to get into that, Dan, but we have so many questions for Sharon. Okay. if you don't mind, I want to get into that later in our conversations with Adam. And I think because we've gone over with viewers, I think what our SROs do, and I think we can hit that a little later, but I have so many things I want to ask each candidate. Do you mind if we continue to move on with those questions?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's just note that. Let's put a footnote there that there's much more there to an SRO.
Well, absolutely. I'm gonna actually link that to the next topic, which is mental health. So SROs working as a community member within our school system can really help with mental health issues. It is not just for, yes, we have teachers and we have counselors, but SROs also really help with, not all kids want to go see a counselor, right? That stigma, we still have that stigma. And if we can give kids another resource, so I would just use that word resource, for someone that they can go to, feel comfortable with, and talk to, that is huge, because the uptick in mental health is frightening, to be quite frank about what's happening. And then the last piece I would say is transparency. So if your viewers haven't watched last week's episode on past Wednesday, talking about the incident that happened at the middle school, a lot of people want to know what transparency looks like. And it looks like when there's an activity that may contain sensitive content, that there's an open dialogue and communication with the parents about what the activity looks like, as well as what is the purpose of the activity, so that parents can be made aware in case there are triggering situations like we saw in the activity that they did, I think it was like a week ago. So transparency looks like different things, but that's definitely one. Again, it ties into mental health. So all of these issues are intertwined, and they need to be looked at comprehensively versus just as a single component.
I couldn't agree more. This is a question I don't relish asking, but I need to, because it certainly has been in the news for the last couple of days, especially on wretched social media. There was a column in the Daily Gazette, I think a week or two ago, that essentially it was an opinion piece, and it essentially linked your candidacy to some kind of extreme conservative ideologies. And I just wanted to know, what your reaction was to that column, and how it's affected the way you've campaigned or not affected it. But just generally speaking, if you wanted to take an opportunity to respond to that piece.
Sure. Quite frankly, it didn't affect anything with my campaigning. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. I think the people that know me and are just meeting me know who I am. They know my heart. So it's unfortunate that our media has become so politically polarized. I think that was evident in the piece itself. And what I really would encourage our media to do is to find out from each of the candidates what they stand for, and how they help, or how they see themselves fitting into the board and making a positive impact for our students, our parents, and teachers and staff.
Speaking of politicalization, I know that 3 of the candidates running went to the Democratic City Committee to ask for $1,000 to help pay for their mailers and campaign literature. Did you go to either the Republican or Democratic Party to ask for any money to help fund your campaign?
Yeah, I did not. I don't believe that school board elections should be political. In fact, we saw this last year in our school board election here, and we saw it this year again, where the New York State Democrat Committee actually had paid for district-wide mailers promoting the 3 other candidates. So again, it's unfortunate that, I'm potentially being linked to all of these groups, but when in fact the proof is in writing, literally, no pun intended, that there are political ties to the other candidates.
On a lighter note, have there been any kind of just like, I know this is such a unique and challenging and sometimes overwhelming experience to go from just being a parent to kind of throwing yourself into a race like this. What has surprised you about running for office, either, good or bad? Anything you want to just share? I'm just curious about the experience.
Yeah. Well, definitely the polarizing political views. Of course, we see that across the country. We see that across the state. And when I really think that the focus of our school board election should be on the benefit of our children, and then the teachers as to how they can help the children, and how parents and how we can all work together. And unfortunately, that seems not the case necessarily. And then there was something else. Oh, the positive. The positive is I am such a people person. So I absolutely love going out, meeting new people, having conversations with them, hearing, things that they love about our district, things that they wish could be improved. And then there's always it's a small world. So there's always some connection that I know someone that they know, or, we used to be connected through whatever. So just really getting out and meeting people in our district, and knowing what's important to them and making new friends and seeing old friends too. So yeah.
Awesome.
I'm going to jump in with a very generic question here, and you could probably, I'm not going to ask you to answer for all 4 other candidates, but I bet you, to everybody's credit, I think they work hard in these elections, exhausting, all 5 of you. And I would guess your answer here is going to be representative to roughly to just all the other candidates. How many doors would you estimate you knocked on during this campaign?
I don't know, hundreds at least, hundreds.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. It's a lot of work, for sure. I will just say I have a whole new appreciation for anyone, no matter where they stand on any positions. It is grueling, and it's a lot of work, but I think that's what we want, right? We want dedicated people who are going to actually put the time in, do the work, because we know that then when they earn that seat, that they're going to continue that dedication and that motivation.
I have one more slightly tough question for you, and I hope you don't mind my asking this, but I've heard you talk a lot about your support for teachers, and I've heard you talk about, wanting to allow teachers to get back to the fundamentals of why they became teachers, which is being in the classroom and educating our children. But I did see that the teachers union did not endorse you. It endorsed 3 other candidates. Does that at all affect, how you feel about teachers or your support for them? Or I'm just wondering how that endorsement might affect that dynamic at all.
It doesn't affect it at all, because my focus is always on the better education for our children. Our children are our future. And so whether the teachers union endorses me or not, that doesn't change my motivation for why I want to be on the board. So no, I guess it would depend on a candidate's reason that they're running, right? So my focus and goal is always the students.
Right. Well said. As we wrap this up, I had a couple other questions about school security and SROs, but I think you actually covered that very well earlier. What do you want people to and I know you've talked about your platform a bit, but if there was something you wanted to get out to voters tomorrow to kind of distinguish you from other candidates, what should people be left with about Sharon Dominguez when they go to vote tomorrow? Why should voters vote for you tomorrow, Sharon Dominguez, for school board?
Yeah. Well, I think coming into this, I don't have a political agenda. My only motivation is for our students, right? Like, we want the best academic return on investment for our kids. And again, it's a complex, mixture of things. And so I think it's about, I want to ask the questions, right? Like, I want to know, like, how can we improve the classroom, for instance? How can we help the teachers get the time back that they're desperately asking for? How do we focus on education? I was at two different teachers' houses Saturday, knocking on doors, and they said 3 R's. Why are we not focused on the 3 R's? And I thought, it's so simple, and I know it's not that simple, because we have so many complex things happening in our society today that we do have to look at those, especially like the mental health issue. So I just think, like, I want to know, like, what is it that we can do? Get in the nitty gritty. I don't want to micromanage, but I do think that there is a disconnect between what's happening in the classroom for our kids and and where we would like to go. And I don't know where that disconnect is because I'm kind of viewing this from the outside.
Well, we have 2 comments here, both from Mark Crockett, who says, Mark Crockett, time for some new people and ideas on the board. And also, every vote counts. I quite agree. Every vote counts. Well, thank you, Sharon. Unless there's anything else to add, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We wish all of the candidates the best of luck tomorrow. And just, again, appreciate your coming on and sharing, about your candidacy and what you stand for. And so voters can be informed tomorrow when they go vote.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to add Adam back in. Adam, you back?
I'm back.
All right. Your name is not Sharon, however. I need to change that. There we go.
Hey, I need to interject something here. I don't know that we said this at the beginning. We invited all 5 candidates to come on this podcast. 3 of them declined, and 2 of them accepted. So everyone knows. I'll maybe a little bit later. I did have a brief conversation on the phone with one of the candidates that declined, and I told her I would not reveal the details of our conversation because it was a good, and I promised her it would be off the record. But maybe I'll touch on it later. Just that I'll say it now. It was Angie Amica, and we agreed to have coffee after this is all over. And I think that's a good sign for all the political dynamics in town here. People meeting for coffee or drinks to discuss issues here, I think is a positive development. We should not be going to our corners. I appreciate her calling me back and so forth. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through the interviews with the candidates that we have, and then we're going to talk about the candidates who chose not to come on. We're not going to talk about why they didn't come on and so on and so forth, but we're going to try to give people a little snapshot of their candidacies, and then, and then we'll weigh in with our own, personal whatnots. But we have Joe Sabanos, and I want to make sure I'm saying his name correctly, standing by. And so I'm going to bring him on in. Joe, how are you?
How are you? Good.
Yeah, Joe, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
No one does. That's quite all right, though. I can give it a whirl. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it properly. I've never confirmed with my ancestors. We call it Sabanos.
Sabanos. Thank you so much.
Hey, if you know anything about me, I'll say it wrong 35 times. I'm very good at mispronouncing people's names. So
he's the master of mispronunciation. It's quite humorous, actually. But anyway, that aside, welcome to the Saratoga podcast. We're so happy to have you on. Thank you for joining us. We just had Sharon on, and we asked her a series of questions. And if it's all right with you, I'm just going to dive in and ask you a similar series of questions.
Sounds great. Yeah, I'm an open book. Let's do it.
Awesome. So what were some of the motivating factors in your decision to run for school board?
I would say in no specific order, but I would say the one thing that perked my ears up to even start following the school board meetings and even getting a little inkling of what's going on here is of course the fact that I do have a daughter who will be entering the district, but more specifically that this concept of the school resource officers was so contentious. And so the meetings that I couldn't attend in person, I would watch the videos of if there was a conflict with one of the other things that I'm involved with, and I would try to listen to both sides of the discussions and really fairly give thought to the pros and the cons of it, and still came up with the original determination that I had, is that I do believe that we need them in our schools. And the fact that I heard that there were 2 individual board members that did vote against having those resource officers, regardless of the recommendations from the insurance company, that they voted against the school resource officer that could have been provided at no cost to the district from the town of Wilton. They also voted against that. I still cannot fathom that someone could say that they are for safety and then vote in that manner. And so that was my initial jumping into this.
Let me ask you, when you
Sure.
decided to jump in, who did you consult? I mean, was there a group of parents you consulted with? Was it your family? I mean, I'm just trying to find out what motivates people. Is this a political thing, or is this you're sitting at home one day and you talk to your wife?
Sure. I think the conversations, of course, started at home. My wife and I care deeply for our daughter's future. We have a niece who is in first grade in the district, and three nephews who are all very young right now, but will be entering the district. My wife and I both ourselves graduated from the district, and yeah, so the initial conversation started probably at the beginning of the year, maybe even beforehand, and I inquired about the concept. And once I received the information, and was made aware that this was a spring cycle and not a typical fall election cycle, I actually thought of just, I'm going to step back. I'm going to give it a whole year to educate myself. And I was contacted by a wonderful group of parents who said, "Hey, listen, this woman Sharon is running, and this is her platform. How do you feel about it?" And I thought about it and said, "Well, I agree with everything she says. That sounds good." And they said, "Well, unfortunately, there are three individuals that are running on a platform of this, and this. Would you be interested in at least meeting and having a discussion about a possible run?" Which I did, and I met some wonderful people who truly care about our district and truly care about our students. And I'll be honest, they twisted my arm a little bit and said, "Why don't you do it this year instead of next?" And here I am.
I'm glad you asked that, Adam, because I actually think it's like such a funky dynamic, to be honest with you, that we have kind of like teams of people that now kind of run for school board. And to get some clarity on how I guess you and Sharon have some synergy and are kind of maybe not running as like an official pair, but you clearly have synergy between your campaigns. To me, it's off-putting that the first introduction I had to the other three candidates was through learning that they had gone to the Democratic Party and seeing that they had been kind of endorsed by the Democratic Party as a slate, the three of them together. I just find that to be an off-putting approach to school board races. So I appreciate your kind of explaining how you and Sharon linked up and how you decided to get into this race. You went over the security issue. Are there any other issues, like one or two things that you feel passionately about that you want to address if and when you're elected to the school board?
Certainly, yes. One of the issues actually I've been hearing and echoing, besides the safety issue, is anytime I get a chance to speak with some teachers, and also some personal friends, and it does appear that there is some concerns on the end, from what I'm hearing, at least from the teachers I've spoke with, that they're not feeling fully supported by administrative staff. And they're expressing this in a very quiet whisper. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole broad spectrum of teachers. But one woman did say to me, "Hey, listen, I'm retiring. That's me. But there's a lot of great young teachers that are looking at alternative career paths. And then I know some personal friends who also went to school for teaching, started teaching, and then left for alternate career paths. And I think we need to find out why. Is it a monetary thing? Is it a safety thing? Is it a support thing from administration? Is it the parents are maybe just grinding down these teachers in a way that's inappropriate? I don't know the answer, but I do know that there is some fantastic and wonderful individuals that are teaching in our district, and I do not want to lose them. And I do know that we've lost some already. And so I do not want to see our fantastic teacher base eroded due to whatever reasons they can be, without figuring out what it is and maybe try to make the changes necessary, or at least start the conversation and figure out how we could fix that.
Those are all like really fantastic questions. And I can't imagine there's a parent in the district who wouldn't want to be asking the same questions. And not to insert myself here, but I also, I was listening to a school board meeting a couple of weeks or months ago, and I was hearing the Latin teacher was retiring. And because I believe it was she, was the only person who taught Latin, the Latin program was then basically going to be eliminated because they only had one person teaching it and this person was leaving. So there can be some serious repercussions to people, when teachers are choosing to go elsewhere, choosing a different career path, et cetera, et cetera. But at any rate, let me continue here.
Dan teaches pig Latin, so we'll throw that out there.
I took Latin for 2 years. It's very valuable.
Actually, I did too.
I didn't. It was never offered in my school, and I regret that.
Well, I mean, Dan, look at us now.
Yeah.
You really missed out. So speaking of, actually, we weren't really speaking of it. We were speaking of it with Sharon, but I think it's an important thing to clarify. I mentioned it earlier. There have been candidates who have gone to the Democratic Committee and sought out $1,000 for their campaign materials. And I just want to clarify for our viewers, whether or not you've approached any political parties or organizations to help fund your campaign.
I'll make it really simple. I have not asked anybody for any money. Literally, there you go. There's the answer. I have received one check from one person who was a parent for $100. That's it. And I put that towards the purchase of the signs, in which I funded myself, and that's it. There's the story of my finance for the campaign.
Well,
it's kind of boring.
No, that keeps it very, very, very simple. That keeps it very, very simple. So in running for this position and throwing yourself into something like a school board race, were there things that you were surprised by, either good or bad, as you've been doing this?
Absolutely. I've been delighted on some of the wonderful people that I've met and gotten to know, and to see the passion that a lot of people in this community have for our students, and also for our teachers. I think that's been really excellent. I've also been delighted on those who are informed and do know what's going on. And then I've also been surprised on how many people seem to be misinformed. And I don't want to overly speculate on where they're receiving misinformation from, but it does appear that some people either are led to believe certain things about our district or about the candidate specifically, and they start to formulate their opinions and of course ultimately their decision on who to vote for. And when I get the chance to talk to them and kind of just lay it out all on the table and just say, hey, here's this, here's that, it does seem that a lot of them are, oh well, I didn't realize that was the case. Oh, I didn't know that does that. And so that, I think, is concerning, that our small little school board election here is being so driven heavily by misinformation, and that's a combination of social media, newspapers, call it whatever you want, and then who knows, maybe just lack of available information. I don't know. I don't really know too much about the other candidates, and I won't say anything bad about them because I don't know much about them besides their voting record, and some of the things they say they stand for, but it all seems to me hard to make a decision.
Right. Speaking of kind of the other side, so to speak, can you share with, because I don't know much about your background, we've never really met before. Can you kind of talk about, we have such a polarized school board right now. It's kind of been like split down the middle on many issues, especially some of the most polarizing issues like SROs and school security. Can you talk about anything in your background that you think would help in terms of bridging the gap and working together with everyone on the school board to create effective change and make it a more productive group?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll try not to lag on too much about my background, but very simply, I've lived in the district almost my entire life, or at least since I was 4, and I've attended, starting Dorothy Nolan in kindergarten and graduated from the high school in 2003. That was 20 years ago. Um, my background is in mostly construction trades, and environmental remediation, on a professional side, and right now I'm a safety officer for a large electrical contractor in the area. Um, I sit on the Greenfield Town Planning Board, and prior to that, when I lived in Wilton, I sat on the Zoning Board of Appeals, each for a few years. And like I said, I'm currently in Greenfield. I think that one of the things that I could bring to this board is the ability to try very hard to not just listen, but to be considerate of all sides of an equation, and come in without any preconceived notions, any personal agenda, and really work towards bringing the board to a sense of community. I understand, yeah, it does appear that everything's polarized these days and that there's a this side and a that side, and it shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, it's about what's best for the students and for the teachers, and so that everybody has a really great experience. That shouldn't be contentious. And the fact that it is, I find to be, it saddens me that people are pushing it into a this side or that side type thing. It should never go down that road. We should all be able to agree on the fact that our students are incredibly important, and their safety is important, and their education is important, and that we should all work towards that and improving upon it.
Speaking of which, because I know SROs are one of your primary, focuses in your platform. What would you say to folks who think that the focus on SROs pulls away from the focus or resources we're putting into mental health. Do you think it's a one or the other situation, or how do you think we kind of address that argument? Because I've heard that a lot from people in public comment in terms of what they'd like to see the school board focusing on.
Sure. Yeah. That probably piggybacks on my suggestion about misinformation. I personally sat down with a school resource officer and someone who's a childhood friend of mine, who is a resource officer in a neighboring district. And he explained to me his day-to-day operations and what it's like to be a school resource officer. And he also, of course, is in communication with our fantastic resource officers that we have. And what he explained to me is that the program that they utilize at that school is vastly different than what Saratoga does. And allow me to elaborate, please. During the day, okay, or once a week, he meets with the administrative staff. He meets with the teachers in a formal setting to identify students that are struggling or potentially animosity building. He is able to formulate and develop very close relationships with the students by earning their trust. He stays after and he goes to sporting events and attends clubs, and every single year he makes sure that he attends at least every sporting event once, every club once, and he really gets to know the teachers and the students call him by his first name. By doing that and by incorporating him as not just an armed security person, but a member of the overall staff, he's able to head off brewing situations that could potentially lead to violence. And he's able to assist students who maybe are having some trouble at home. So yes, mental health is there and we need help for it, but he plays an integral role in that, where some students may not feel that they want to go to a guidance counselor. So, and what he explained to me is Saratoga is not utilizing their resource officers to that extent. They're just simply putting them there. Every once in a while, they'll let them go into the classroom, talk with the kids, etc. But they're not fully using them to their capabilities that they have. And I would be pushing to elaborate on our resource officer program so that we can be having them play an even more important role in our students' day-to-day activities.
Joe, let me jump in with a quick question, because I was at the debates, and at the debates you talked about, and I don't want to misquote you here, but something about being there for the little guy or the downtrodden kid. Can you expand on that? What you were talking about?
Certainly, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I did mention at the debate that I failed a couple classes myself personally, and I had some serious struggles in school. I was not the A student or even B student, but I had so many teachers that really truly took the time to take me off to the side and show me through their actions that they believe that I could be something more than just a student who gets C's and D's and or barely makes it through a class, and that I could be a productive member of the school community, and then of course the actual community as an adult. And so I am there running this race so that we could support those type of students, but we could support the teachers who put in that extra effort. And I know that we have a lot of those fantastic teachers, but I don't want to lose them, because those are the teachers, and school resource officers could do this as well, and administrative staff, et cetera. They could all do this. I know many of them do. They could all give the guidance and support and encouragement to our students that are having that extra difficulties, whether it be in their personal life, whether it be mental health issues, whether it be just struggles, so that they can see they do have a bright future ahead of themselves. And that future may not look like their friend's future. It may look very different, but it could still be bright and successful.
There's so much to be said for having just one person believe in you in that way. So much to be said for that. What a great question, Adam. Thank you for that. Joe, before we wrap you up, I just want to ask if is there one thing that you want to get out to voters before tomorrow's election that you want people to know about you that distinguishes you from the other candidates, or that you'd like people to know before we kind of wrap up here about you as a candidate before they go vote tomorrow?
Certainly, yeah. You know, I think that a board should be a really good cross section of a community. I can't say that I know the specific ins and outs of every board member, but I do know who I am. I am the person that, like I said, had struggles in schools. I am the person that works in the construction industry and puts on a hard hat. I am the person that comes home every day and just tries to, get everything done, whether it be, make dinner and then cut the lawn and then, make it off to soccer practice. That's me. That's the representation that I would like to bring, is just the dad who loves my daughter and wants all the students to be able to have an awesome experience the way that I did when I went to school right here. And I think that that's incredibly important. And I encourage everyone to take the time in whatever way possible to learn about all the candidates in whatever formats that they can. Like I said, I had it hard. I'm having a hard time figuring out what some of the other candidates are really about. Um, I don't really know what some of their platforms are, but figure it out. Try to find out if they represent you as an individual, and if you believe they do, then that's fine. But find out who really represents you, and make that important decision. And please participate. That's all I ask is everyone please do their best and participate with a good educated vote.
Well, Joe, I'm going to tell you, you have a fan in Mark Crockett who says Joe and Sharon will represent the students and their parents. So thank you, Mark, for your comments. Thank you, Joe, so much for coming on today. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate the fact that you're running for this position. We know how much work it is. We know what a sacrifice it is just to be running. So we thank you for that, and we wish you the best of luck tomorrow.
Thanks for having me. It was nice meeting everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Bye.
All right, folks, we have our next guest coming up. Are you ready?
Wow, guess that. Rapid fire here.
I know,
Let's bring him in, but I think there's a big disclaimer here.
Oh, yes, I will make the disclaimer. Well, I'm going to bring him on and make the disclaimer. Benjamin Glover, are you with us?
Hi, Robin.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming on. So first, I just want to say, before anything else, Benjamin Glover is a minor and he is in high school. And I just wanted to preface this interview by letting people know that I did speak to his parents and he does have permission to join us on the podcast today. And Benjamin, I hope that I did not mean for that to embarrass you. I just wanted to.
Oh, absolutely not. I completely understand.
Yes, important disclaimer for our viewers because I want them to know that we are being very responsible in how we produce this podcast.
So, yeah, I want to point out real quick too, Ben. It's very impressive. I think these are lessons that our students should be learning. Being involved in local politics, getting involved, learning about the issues, and I think this is a great thing you're doing, and I think this will lead you to great things. So, welcome
Thanks,
to the
Adam.
show.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
I concur. You look sharp. I've met you a number of times before. I'm impressed with you. Good for you.
Yes.
Thank you, Adam.
The reason we have Benjamin on today is because, well, a couple of reasons, but primarily he has a podcast called Saratoga Talks. And we have been noticing for a couple of weeks now that he's been paying very close attention to the school board race. And as a student at the Saratoga Springs City High School, we just thought, it was really impressive that he was following the school board race to the extent he was following it. He was getting interviews, he was going to forums, but also we just thought that the student perspective here couldn't be more important. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to start off by asking Benjamin, what's it like as a student just to watch these campaigns and this election kind of evolve? What's it been like on your end?
I think it's been interesting learning about the candidates as somebody who's involved, but it's been disheartening seeing how uninterested people are in my high school in school board elections, especially considering how important they are. It's literally their educational experience as they're going through it are decided by these people. And I think that if we had more public information that was more available to these high school kids, then they could inform their parents better and they can inform themselves because they're going to be adults in a few years. So they're going to have to know what they believe and who aligns with their beliefs and how to choose their elected officials. And I think this is a great opportunity, and I wish that it had more attention, honestly.
I totally agree with you in that, we have to bring information to where people are, right? Like we can't expect students to come out and go to necessarily a League of Women Voters forum and watch.
Yeah, it's 2.5 hours. I mean...
Right. It was not, exactly.
But an enthralling 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
So would you say that?
Dan, are you being serious?
Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
All right. I was gonna say, I think this is all debates in this city there's just not a lot of substance in these things, and I understand why people don't want to take stances, but there's no practical. All right, this is what we're going to do and why. But I digress.
Well, let's first of all say there's a big difference between a forum and a debate. A forum is just question, answer. A debate, you can actually do a little sparring. Right. You can mix it up a little bit. Yeah. But for school board elections, it's straight up forums. Anyhow.
In all fairness, in this city, it does get balanced out at City Hall.
Yeah.
Plenty of action there.
True. So Benjamin, would you say that like well, if you had to, I know this is just like I'm totally guessing here, but if you had to guess, what percentage of the population of the high school, of the kids, do you think are even aware that the school board election is happening?
Like my friends and maybe the kids of the board members.
Oh, God.
Like 0.1%. Nobody, it's treated less important than the student council election, because at least the student council election has people that they know. So unless it's your parent or your parent's a teacher at the high school, maybe, because the teachers care about the board elections. As far as I can see, I've spoke to a few teachers of mine about the school board elections, and they are far more interested than the kids are.
Right. Interesting.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
So I know that there is like a student representative that usually goes to the school board, and there's a couple of them.
Yeah, I think there's 2. Yeah.
Yeah, and they go and they kind of give updates as to what's going on at the elementary schools or the high school. It's fairly kind of, I mean, they do a good job. They just give like kind of a little recap. But I'm wondering if there are any issues that go on in the high school that students kind of aren't making the connection, that the issues that they're concerned about could be addressed by the school board as a group. And if maybe they're not making that connection.
Well, a lot of people, I've talked to a couple of my friends about this, because when I started doing the podcast and covering the school board election, I got a lot of questions about what exactly I was talking about. It seems like even the basic organizational structure of a school district is not very well comprehended. So when I say school board election, surprising amount of students think I'm talking about the student council elections and aren't know. Like a lot of the kids that I've talked to believe that when they talk about the highest body, they talk about the superintendent or the principal. They don't realize that there's a board above them, because there's no exposure to that. And there's certainly exceptions, people in participation in government class and people who are older, seniors and juniors generally know more. But freshmen, it's rough.
You know, I have to say that doesn't surprise me in a sense, because I would guess that if you polled like the adults in Saratoga Springs, a lot of people couldn't articulate to you exactly what the purpose is of the school board and how it functions within the school district.
Yep.
But it's a shame, because when it comes to things, and I want to ask you more specifically about a couple issues in a bit, but when it comes to things like vaping or fights in school or school security, like these are all issues that come before the school board. Or, academics, like when Latin was, being eliminated because this teacher was retiring and there were students who were really upset about it. Like all these issues are actually issues that come before the school board. And it's a shame that we can't kind of do a better job making that connection so student opinion and voices could be better represented.
Yep. And I think that it's a shame that had to happen to get kids out there, but it's kind of incredible that 10, 12 students went out at 7 p.m. to a middle school board of education meeting to talk about something that they cared about. And that is an excellent example of what should be happening more. If these kids, if we can make the connection for these kids that the issues that are important to them are connected to this elected group of people in which you can submit a public comment, I think you'd be surprised at how many kids are willing to come out and talk about that and voice their concerns in campaign season and during just regular business, during regular board meetings.
And that would be, I think, really awesome. So speaking of issues, what is your sense of the security issue and the issue of SROs being in schools? Is this something that's talked about? Is this something that kids are concerned about? Kind of what's your read?
My read is it's perhaps I think the issue that is the most important in school board elections that is the least important in the day-to-day of kids when we talk about the dialogue. Officer Barrett is just kind of he's excellent person. He's there all the time. He's part of the school. He's like the teacher. It's like if they talked about removing a teacher or a counselor or the attendance lady, like
so there's no controversy.
So it's not, a lot of kids probably don't know that the SRO program is in jeopardy. And a lot of the kids don't understand the SRO issue fully. And a lot of the adults don't seem to either.
So there's no controversy around it the way that
there's not a huge amount of controversy. I would say there's far more controversy about how we would deal with vaping and issues of diversity and inclusion.
So speaking of which, so vaping is obviously been a huge issue.
Ginormous issue.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Describe the amount of vaping that goes on in the school to kind of.
There are points where you enter the bathroom and it feels like you're walking into a club in which the amount of smoke and it's because it's, some are odorless and smokeless, but some aren't. So, often we have issues where it's, I mean, you can smell it, you can see it, you cough. It's like, it's an obvious enough issue where it's not just the kids who vape. It's everybody who wants to go to the bathroom, Can
I ask you a question? I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Do you think this is mostly people like vaping like pot, or is this like tobacco?
Sometimes it's nicotine. A lot of vapes are laced with other things. So sometimes the kids don't know. That is another concerning issue, is that sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes the kids aren't sure whether or not the vape is laced or if it isn't laced, which can be a serious issue, especially considering some of these vapes are dangerous and contain harmful chemicals. I mean, all of them contain harmful chemicals, but some of them are far more harmful than others. Yeah. So it's a prevailing issue that is being dealt with in I would say almost, I don't know. The only anti-vaping efforts I've seen is I got an email from the principal like 3 months ago that they installed vape detectors, and there's signs outside the bathrooms. And that just doesn't feel like enough, especially for a school district with a like $100 and something million budget. They can't afford more than a couple signs and an email.
Yeah, that actually seems this is like wonderful feedback, but that's actually pretty freaking embarrassing.
Yes. So, Robin, if I could jump in on that.
Yeah, please do.
Someone my age, and I'm old, I was in school 40 years ago. Occasionally you get a smoker in the bathroom smoking a cigarette, occasionally, but they just didn't tolerate that. So it's sort of shocking to me, and I've heard this before, so I'm not shocked today, but I was shocked a couple years ago when I first heard how pervasive it was. It's shocking to me that they can't stop this or won't stop this. What is, maybe you don't know, and I get that, but what does your gut tell you as to why it's not being stopped?
I think it's a combination of a normalization and a misunderstanding of why people vape. I think a lot of people have this vision of vaping as smoking where it's a gateway to more harmful behavior, and it's a reaction to, a bad home life or other issues that are more systemic like that. And often it can just be under the stress of being a high schooler. Like, people make jokes about being a teenager all the time, but it is hard at points. And a lot of these kids get into vaping because it's a de-stressor. It's nicotine. And it's and a certain aspect of it is peer pressure, but I think more than peer pressure, it's the normalization of it. You know, oh, that kid vapes, whatever. It's not a disqualifying factor. You aren't weird if you vape. In fact, I would consider, if you said you weren't in certain classes, in certain areas of the high school, not physical areas, but, like friend groups and such, it would be weirder if you didn't vape. And I think that's a prevailing issue, is that when you have an issue that's this common and systemic in the high school, it's going to require some serious effort to denormalize it. I think the best combative to this issue is education. These kids don't know a lot about vapes. Like, I've talked to a lot of the kids who vaped, and they really don't know about how harmful it is and how harmful it can be beyond, it's smoking.
Now, I'm like old, right? I'm 41. So old generation. I don't even know what generation. I think I'm like half in one, half in another. But what's so distressing for me is that we essentially, like, the peer group that I grew up in, smoking was like disgusting. Like, nobody smoked cigarettes. It was not cool. Like, maybe you tried one time in high school, you coughed, you felt like shit, you never did it again. Smoking was not cool. And I don't know any of my friends who smoke cigarettes. Like, we all knew it was horrible for us and nobody did it. And vaping, like you said, seems to have been normalized to this like dramatic extent. But I think, as you said, the health benefit, that what it does to your health has really fallen to the wayside. And I would hope that the same way we were educated to not smoke cigarettes because we would get lung cancer, and not to mention, wrinkles and all this other shit, all these other terrible health problems. And it was basically poison that we were putting into our body. If we were able to educate kids the same way we did back then, the same way we do now, but just with vapes, it's just a different delivery method.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems with vaping is that we just don't know. The years of studies aren't there. It's such a new kind of phenomenon or a new product. And what happens, especially, is that the young kids, the developing bodies, are becoming the guinea pigs for testing it, and that's what's really scary. Is that the vaping, the long-term effects of vaping aren't known because there's no long-term data on it. So, and Benjamin, we'd all have kids coming up underneath you. If you ever see one of those kids with a vape pen in their hand, smack it at them and tell us.
Smack it out of their hand.
Yeah, you have full permission to do that with any adult.
He's not going to do that. He's not going to.
With our
he'll do
kids.
something good for him, but he won't tell us.
Alert Officer Barrett immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny, actually. I saw a kid, Officer Barrett and I frequently chat at school because I'm hanging around the public safety department, let's say, and I see him often when I'm at the public safety department, let's say. And so I see him at school a lot, and we often talk. And one of the kids who I don't know, junior, senior or something, walked up to Officer Barrett and said, "Hey, look in this bathroom. There's, in this bathroom, some kids vaping or whatever." And like an ROTC guy, a lot of Army stuff. And Officer Barrett walked away and presumed he went to go investigate it. I never heard anything about it. I went to class, but it does happen. I mean, kids report it, but also there is the risk of being outed if you do report it. I mean, that is the ultimate. Again, that's the thing, is it builds off this normalization. If it's normal to vape, if you report somebody for vaping, it's like and all these other people are worried that they're going to be the next one reported, so they all want to out this one dude. I mean, that's how these trends don't die.
I also wanted to hit on another issue you brought up, which was diversity, equity, inclusion, and issues of race. Can you talk to us about how much of an issue that is right now in the high school? Because it sounds like it's at the forefront of people's minds.
I mean, obviously social media has accelerated it a lot, and the unique school district we live in, we are not a very diverse community. That's just the reality of our community. Yep. And at the high school, that it seems as if the school administration, and I'm not saying they are, it seems to most high schoolers that the school administration is almost hilariously out of touch with how bullying occurs. We had an anti-bullying assembly recently, and I won't say the person, obviously, because I don't want to out them, but one of the people who was speaking at the anti-bullying assembly was a known bully who had harassed and done all these terrible things to all of these, kids. Been reported many times, nothing happened. But the point is if the school administration doesn't throw up flags at a bully speaking about, he was, a thing that happened, and then they, that wasn't recognized. And it compounded with the fact that there was no, African-American or non-Caucasian members who spoke at that anti-bullying assembly.
Come on.
Considering racism and xenophobia is a serious issue at high school, we need at least one diverse voice who will come up there and say, "Hey, this happened to me. This is how it happens. This is why it shouldn't happen." And
they had an all-white panel?
Incredible. I don't know if it was all white, but there was no African-American members.
Well, and let me. I'm going to pull Dan Dita Federici here and just restate what you stated, just because I think it's very powerful. You're saying that there was, on the anti-bullying task force, there was a known bully speaking.
There was a known bully. It was run through the NCBI program, I think. I think it was.
Yes, I'm familiar with the NCBI program.
I think it was like an NCBI assembly thing, and I've been to one of their meetings before.
I wonder if that's part of the. Maybe it's part of their diversity policy is to get bullies in there too. They're.
Oh God.
Adam. Adam is joking. Adam is joking.
Adam is joking.
Wait, other kind of sensitive question is some of the bullying or a lot of the bullying, does it have to do around issues of race? Like, are people being bullied?
Absolutely. It has to do with issues of race, issues of sexual oriation, gender. I mean, height, age, physical description, background, everything. I mean, it's high school. And a certain aspect of it is like there will always be bullies in high school, but we can certainly go to efforts to minimize that, especially considering we're living in an age where these bullies' voices have been amplified by the use of social media and online presence. We need to combat it. And this is not the way. This is, if anything, encouraging the bullies. Hey, if you bully, you'll get up on the anti-bullying assembly and get to talk about how hard your life is bullying people.
Do we know at what age you have to be to run for the Board of Election, Benjamin? Because
education. It's you have to be.
That was a joke saying you really have a.
I see. Thank you. I didn't get that.
18. A few more years. 18.
Public officers law.
Or you can ask him.
Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
So and you'll formulate this question better. You're probably about to get to it, but are we going to talk to him about his interviews on Toga Talks? Because I think those are his podcast is remarkable.
I just had one quick follow-up observation about what he was just talking about in bullying. It's, we are such a predominantly white community, and that's not, for everyone living here right now, it's not any one person's fault, right? That it's a predominantly white community. But it would seem to me that especially at the high school, where we have our Black population, our Hispanic population, our Asian population, our Jewish population are much smaller in comparison to the largely white community, that we would be particularly sensitive to issues of bullying around race or religion or sexual orientation in particular. And so it just makes me really upset to hear that this is going on and the school district isn't reacting in a more proactive, effective way, rather than in emails or, a bullying assembly with a bullshit panel.
Yeah, I would like to point out about the bullying assembly before I move on quickly that Principal Sal told a very powerful and moving story about her past experiences with xenophobia in the high school as the principal. And I want to point that out, that it's not all bad, and that the school administration has made some, good, amazing strides. And I think there's some awesome programs. NCBI is one of them. I've been to one of their meetings. They're an excellent resource for mental health education. I was there and I learned things that I didn't know, and I consider myself pretty educated in that specific field. But I would like to point out that I think it's an issue where if there's a couple small flaws in how the school administration does it, it can be catastrophic for the entire program, because that's all the kids will focus on. I guarantee you.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is, it sounds like the students are trying to do the right thing. It sounds like we need some more grown-up participation to make things really coalesce. I think the administration needs to step up, and I think the administration needs to talk to the kids. I think I'm sure Principal Sal has done this at some point, but and the other school administration officials, I would encourage them to go to one of the NCBI meetings, sit down with those kids and ask them, how do we fix this? Because those kids have good ideas. I've talked to a couple of them. A couple of them are my friends. They're smart. People who want to help people. Speaking of talking to students, you have a podcast called Toga Talks.
I do.
And since we are fledgling podcasters ourselves, we applaud anyone who gets into the podcasting game. And so we applaud you for starting your podcast, and everyone should go look it up it's Toga Talks. You're on multiple
Facebook, Instagram. We're on SoundCloud. We are on
YouTube.
We're on YouTube. We are on YouTube. Go check us out on YouTube. And if you follow us on our Facebook or Instagram page, we also have occasional posts regarding endorsements, news. We're coming to the end of the school board election cycle, but approximately in a couple days, we start our primary coverage. So we're covering Chris Mathieson v. Ron Kim in the Democratic primary, June 26th, 7th?
27th, yes.
27th, thanks. So follow us there. We're pretty awesome.
So can you share with us some of the interviews that you've done for the school board election on Toga Talks?
So on Toga Talks, I have reached out to every candidate. And after a meeting, or a couple, small annoyances in person, as well as a couple reminders via text, I've received a response from every candidate. Tony Crackler, Anjanetta Mecca, and Beth Fogarty Braxton all declined my invitation, respectfully. And Joe Sabanos and Sharon Dominguez jumped on the first message that I had saying, hey, when are you available? Here's when I'm available. Let's meet. And I conducted 2 interviews with Joe Sabanos and Sharon Dominguez.
So I have to say, just my personal opinion here, when, we just talked about the importance of listening to students. My personal opinion here is that it's extremely disappointing to me to hear that any school board candidate would not take the opportunity to go on a podcast that's hosted by a student at the high school and take that opportunity to talk about their candidacy for school board. It's extremely disappointing for me to hear that, just as on a personal note.
Yeah, I think it was unfortunate, and I wasn't insulted. It is obviously their decision if they want to come on or not.
Right.
But I felt it was a disservice to the voters, where they had an opportunity to be informed about these candidates' opinions, and that was, declined.
And Benjamin,
policy.
Benjamin, you don't have any bias here that I'm aware of. You're not involved in any of these campaigns. Politically, you don't have, I mean, there's no known connections about what you've done in Saratoga Springs and these school board races that would make them think that you would be anything other than fair in terms of your conversations with them.
I asked almost exactly the same questions to Joe and Sharon, and I would have asked the same ones to Tony and Beth and Jeanette. And I really just, my main goal is to get public information out there, get people out to the ballot, and get people out to the ballot feeling confident about who they want to vote for. Because I think besides no vote, the worst vote you can give is an uninformed one. Yeah. So I think that giving each candidate the opportunity in a more kind of one-on-one setting that isn't the forum would have been a great opportunity. And it would have been a great opportunity to be able to take, quote those clips and say, okay, this is what this candidate thinks, this is what this candidate thinks. Because you can't do that for the League of Women Voters candidate forum. That is completely 100% banned.
The League of Women
you have to watch the whole thing.
The League of Women's Voter Forum has a policy where their forums are quite long, but they have a policy where they will not allow you to take video clips of the forum and share
or
audio.
Yeah.
So if you want to share anything from the forum, you have to share the entire thing, which makes it kind of a bummer because you're just going to get fundamentally less eyes on it, which is unfortunate.
Yep. Well, I think the issue there, and this kind of ties into something I'll talk about later, is that what happens is when you start chopping up clips, you can take things out of context. And I think it's something our local media is very good at, about cherry picking things that they can use to frame a picture differently than what happened. So it's like anything, there's pros and cons to that, but that is why the League of Women Voters does that, is to prevent the cherry picking of information that could potentially misrepresent something that was said or a sentiment from a candidate. And I wish our media did a better job of some kind of policy of not using little quibs to misrepresent reality.
I understand that, but to Robin's point, it becomes useless unless you've got who's got 95 minutes, an hour and a half, or 2 hours to really go through that. Not too many people. I get your point. That would be
it would behoove them to cut it up into questions. Like, here's the questions. Here are these three candidates answered. They could cut it up into clips themselves.
And that's why, and that's why I asked every candidate on, is because I wanted to give them that opportunity to be, in a fair, I mean, look at Sharon and Joe were interviewed. Nobody spliced up their clips and quoted them and framed them for anything, but it gave voters a better, more condensed opportunity to go, hey, this is what this candidate thinks. This is what this candidate thinks. And we tried to accomplish that on our Facebook and Instagram page as well. On a couple of different issues, we quoted from their campaign materials and their Facebook pages about what their stance on certain issues so that people could swipe through and literally see what every candidate believes about that issue. But I just wish we had more an opportunity to do that. But I think we've done a great job this year. Both you and I have been able to interview a couple candidates, and I think that's
team.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, listen, I don't want to take up any more of your time because I know you're technically at school right now, but
I'm not. I have a pass. I'm good.
Oh, good. You have a pass. Okay, good. So no one's getting in trouble. Officer Barrett, stand down.
No, he actually helped me get out.
Well, I just want to say, generally speaking, I mean, it's been fantastic to have you on, and fantastic. I mean, so great. As again, Mark Crockett just said, so good to hear from a student on these issues. I couldn't agree more.
Thanks, Mark.
I mean, this has been such valuable information for me to hear as a parent and as a voter. I mean, wouldn't you agree, guys?
Especially Benjamin, someone as well-spoken as you. You're beyond your years. So someday, 15 years from now, he's going to be so famous, and we're going to be back here toiling away in Saratoga, and we can say, we knew him when.
Toiling away? I expect you all to be Congress people by then.
Oh, Jesus.
Not by choice.
Yeah, I've said this. You're a very impressive young man. Keep
Thank
up your passion for politics and civics, because it's really, there's a big void of leadership in our overall country right now for people who want to see good things, not just push their own policies. So
thanks.
And Benjamin, I hope we can have you back on as you continue to cover city politics and so on and so forth. And I would love to somehow come up, offline. Maybe we can brainstorm some ways that we could get some of this messaging about the school board and school board elections out to students in a more productive and effective manner, because I know I would love to be a part of making that connection. So
we should bring on like a whole like panel of people who are like involved in local politics. We should have like Kaufman on and all of you guys on and
That'd be
myself
great.
On.
I would love
Yeah,
that.
the problem we're finding is that people with views that tend to be to the left don't like to come on programs and talk openly about it. I mean, like we said, we've invited a lot of people to this show. Well, actually, that's wrong.
That's not true. That's not really true. We actually have a lot of progressive Democrats on the show.
You're right. You're right.
I'm a Democrat.
I take it back. I take it back. Yep.
Adam withdraws that comment.
We'll see here. I haven't invited anybody to because we're not in primary season yet, but we'll see. I'm gonna invite both candidates on, and I'm sure you are too.
Oh, we will be. And I will say, we are aware of our own biases on the show. When Mayor Ron Kim was on, I am embarrassed to say, but I will be totally truthful about it. In that moment, I knew that I could not give him a fair shake. I knew that I could not keep my mouth shut in a way that would be professional. And so I stood down and I let Dan and Adam conduct the interview, because here at the Saratoga podcast, we are respectful with our guests. We let them speak their piece. And if we can't do that, we got to stand down. So
here.
Anyway, Benjamin, we've loved having you on today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity so much. It was a great time coming on. Thanks, guys.
We hope you'll come back soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Hey, guys. So that was what a great way to round out kind of our school board episode, to have Benjamin come on and talk about. I mean, that was like fascinating to me.
It was so enlightening. It was so insightful to what's going on at the 15 to 17, 18-year-old level.
I know. And couldn't have asked for someone more articulate or well-spoken. I mean, he's I'm worried if we were going to promote Toga Talks too much, he's going to like eclipse us in a hot minute.
He probably already did.
I know. So just real quick, I know we're over an hour, so we've kind of exceeded our time limit already, but I did want to read a statement from Tony Crackler that he sent to me today. I think it's important. And if you guys can give me a second, I'm just going to pull it up right here. I asked him, he declined to come on. He did, but I did ask him if he wanted to kind of add anything to our podcast today. And he sent me this. He said, the only thing I think it's important to add is that despite my saying repeatedly in public, at board meetings and at the League of Women Voters Night, in Facebook posts and in the recent TU article, that now that we have 4 SROs under contract, I will be voting to renew those contracts this summer when they are presented to us for renewal. I have voted 3 times to support our original SROs, and I voted once to not expand the number from 2 to 4. But now that they're in, they're in. Sharon, Joe, and surrogates are openly telling people that I will be voting to eliminate all SROs from the school once the next contracts come up for renewal. That is simply not true. Being against doubling the SRO number is neither anti-cop nor is it anti-SRO as part of our district-wide safety plan. So I just thought it was important to read that statement so people are clear on Tony's position. He sent it to me. That's word for word exactly what he wrote. And so I just wanted to make sure that got out there for voters before they go vote tomorrow.
And in fairness to Miss Amika and Fogarty Braxton, they declined. They both cited they had scheduling conflicts due to travel. Just so I neglected to say that earlier.
Robin the skeptic is going to throw shade on that because I'm just saying, I know Joe was traveling today for work. He managed to come on. This is like Zoom. We send you a link. You can hop on like wherever you are. We've had Adam on from Ukraine, literally in the middle of a war zone. School board elections are tomorrow.
I'll throw a little shade too in the fact of, we heard these school board candidates talk about with this insurance adjuster or this insurance recommendations that they would follow the guidelines of the insurance and they would, vote for school SROs if the insurance company made that recommendation. The insurance company did make that recommendation and they did still vote against SROs. So again, there's a little skepticism of mine about the true support of SROs.
Fair enough. I just want to be clear that they didn't verbally or written flat out decline.
Correct. I mean, Tony did, but the other 2 did not.
Okay.
But I will say, for a democracy to function, you need to have access to information. And that's really what we try to provide here. So it's unfortunate they didn't take the opportunity. I think it's probably a strategy that may be very successful for them, though. They package themselves together and they're doing things in lockstep, and maybe that's a successful strategy. I don't know. I just personally think it's antithetical to elections and democracy, but that's just my opinion.
And at least on Toga Talk, they should have gone on Toga Talk.
That is
There's
bullshit.
no excuse for that.
That is total bullshit. I'm sorry. If a student asks you to be on his podcast to talk about your school board candidacy, you say yes. You say yes. That was crap. I'm using bad language now. Apologies to any student watching. Don't use my language. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up unless you have anything else to say. I think we can skip cheers and jeers for this week and save it for Wednesday.
Sounds good.
No, we'll come back to, tomorrow. You can go to your local, whatever, if you have a child in the district, or if you did, whatever school they would go to, that's where you go to vote. It's important to vote. Tell your friends to watch this show if they haven't, if they're wondering about the positions of the candidates. And I guess we'll see you. We're still going to do our show Wednesday, right, guys?
Yes, we are going to do a show Wednesday. Are we going to say really quick who we're voting for here? For school board?
I have no problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have no problem. All right, go for it. Adam and Dan, who are you guys voting for tomorrow?
Dan, go ahead.
I am going to bullet vote for Joe Sabanos. Did I say his name correctly? And Sharon Dominguez. I did do some research for the spot. I read everybody's website and so forth. And I just think they're the two best candidates.
Adam?
I'm going to surprise a little bit people here that I am actually not going to bullet vote, and I'll explain why. I'm going to vote for Joe and Sharon, obviously, because SROs are very important to me, and school safety is one of the most important things. But I'm going to throw in a vote for Miss Beth Fogarty Braxton, and I'll give you a couple of reasons. One, her mother was my teacher, my elementary school teacher, who I have just very, very fond memories of her mother. And I went to the debate. I thought Miss Fogarty Braxton had a very calm and competent demeanor. And I think that we need new blood on the school board. Aunt Janetta and Tony have been on there a while. And I mean, nowhere do you point to kind of real tangible things that's been accomplished while they've been there. So I'd like to see some new blood. So I'm voting for new blood for school board.
Adam, I feel like you're maybe in my brain and it's freaking me out a little bit. So I also am supporting Sharon and Joe. I have the utmost respect for Tony and Angie. I've been watching them on the school board, but there has just been this like deadlock on the school board for the last couple of years because we've had essentially the same group of people. And so I also think we need some new blood and we need some new ideas. SROs are also very important to me. And so that's why I'm voting for Sharon and Joe. But I also am giving some consideration to Beth for two reasons. One, I had 3 people show up knocking on my door whose opinions I all respect. And they sat down with me and talked through a lot of what Beth stands for. And I was able to ask them a lot of questions about Beth. And I felt really comfortable with her candidacy, but also for the reasons that Adam mentioned. I think we need new voices and new faces on that board. So I'm not entirely dead set if I'm voting for 2 or voting for 3, but if I'm voting for 3, it would include Beth. And so that's where I'm at. And by the way, Adam, your answer left Benjamin shocked.
I was going to write in Benjamin. Can I write in Benjamin for my third one?
Yeah, I know, right? I know. I figured that it's amazing when your politics aren't partisan, when your politics are just belief what's best for the city and the people in that city. It's amazing where you get shocked sometimes because this is where we're at. I think we need more people. We ran as independents, Robin, because we think more people just should think independently and not put themselves in a tribe and just go along with what the tribe tells them to do. So anyway, I'm not shocked that people think it's shocked, but I wish it wasn't that way.
By the way, Mark Crockett has this to say about their declining to go on Toga Talks. He says, amen. They should have gone on the student podcast. We quite agree, Mark. We quite agree. All right, folks, we will see you all back here on Wednesday. Tuesday, tomorrow night is not only election night for the school boards, but it's also a city council night. I've looked at the agenda. There's nothing like wild or dramatic or jaw-dropping on it so far, but it's Monday. Things can change. So we will see you back here Wednesday at noon. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Stay charming, Saratoga.
Thank you, folks.